We don't always know the moment a family decides you're no longer one of them. Sometimes it's not a fight or a slammed door. Sometimes it's a piece of paper slid across a table like it's ordinary. Sloane Ardyn Vale was an interior designer when her family made their choice, and what stayed with her wasn't the money. It was the way the room went still, like everyone had practiced holding their breath. This is how she remembers it. The paper felt heavier than it should have. Not fancy. Just official. Arthur Leland's letterhead at the top, my name typed cleanly under it, and then a block of legal language that made my eyes blur if I stared too long. We were in my parents' dining room in Darien. The chairs were all taken except the one at the far end, the one they saved for me. My father stood behind his chair like he was in court. My mother sat with her hands folded, posture perfect, face blank. 9 relatives were there. Not friends, not neighbors. Blood. People who'd eaten at this table and laughed at this table and now couldn't look me in the eye for more than a second. Arthur adjusted his glasses and tapped the page with one finger. "This is a qualified disclaimer of interest," he told me. Calm, like he was reading a closing checklist. "Your grandfather's irrevocable trust provides for you. This document confirms you are disclaiming voluntarily and without coercion." The word voluntarily landed wrong. Everyone knew why we were here. They just wanted it recorded in a clean font. My father's voice came in flat and controlled. "This is about stability. Camille understands generational responsibility." I looked toward my sister. Camille sat to my father's right, hands folded, blazer pressed, chin lifted like she was already the person they'd chosen. She didn't offer me anything. No apology. No softness. Just that calm, practiced patience she used when she wanted people to believe she was reasonable. My mother finally turned her head. "You've always chosen instability. Sloane, no anger, no heat." Like she was naming a weather report. Arthur kept going, because that was his job. "The total trust value is $6.8 million. Your disclaimer will redirect your share according to the trust terms." I stared at the line where my signature was supposed to go. A little tab marked it, like they were helping me. Camille's mouth moved. Barely. "It's cleaner this way." I didn't answer. My throat felt tight, but my hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I'd imagined myself breaking, crying, begging, but sitting there, I just felt distant, like I was watching someone else's life get reassigned. Arthur slid the pen closer. "When you're ready." I picked it up. The pen was cold. My father didn't blink. My mother didn't move. The relatives stayed perfectly quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you hear every tiny sound, the scrape of the pen cap, the soft creak of someone shifting in their chair. I signed my name. We saw her pause after the last letter, just long enough to breathe, and then set the pen down like it belonged to someone else. I pushed the paper back toward Arthur. Understood. No one reached for me. No one said my name like it mattered. I stood, and the chair legs made a small protest against the floor, loud in that silent room. As I walked out, I caught the wall of framed photos behind Camille, her graduation, her award dinner, a family trip to Rome. There wasn't a single picture of me. Outside, the rain had started again. I got to my car and closed the door. And that's when my phone buzzed, a text from Camille. "It's just strategic." I didn't reply. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and drove away like I hadn't just watched my family erase me on purpose. If you want more stories like this on Revenge Sins, you can subscribe and find the next one when you're ready. Providence felt smaller after that Sunday. My apartment was 1 room and a half wall pretending to be a kitchen. I dropped my keys in the ceramic bowl by the door and stood there longer than I meant to. The place looked exactly the same. Drafting table by the window, fabric swatches clipped to a corkboard, a roll of tracing paper half off the edge. Nothing dramatic had changed. My bank app still showed $3,740. Same number as before. It just felt different now. Thinner. On Tuesday morning, I had a client call about a townhouse refresh. $900. Paint, lighting, small layout tweaks. Not glamorous, but steady. She sounded polite. Sloane, I've been meaning to reach out. Sure. What's going on? A pause. Papers shuffling on her end. We've decided to go in another direction. Okay. Is there feedback? Another pause. Longer. It's more personal timing. We heard there might be some instability. Instability. That word again. I'm not sure what that means. I don't want to get into anything uncomfortable. I just think we need someone established. The call ended cleanly. No argument. No explanation. Just a quiet withdrawal. 4 days later, a kitchen consult I'd already measured for $1,200. The homeowner didn't email. She called. I'm really sorry. We're going to postpone. For how long it's just, we were advised to be cautious. By whose silence? I'd rather not say. I sat at my table after that one and stared at the wall. I wasn't late on rent. I didn't owe anyone money. There were no liens, no lawsuits, nothing in my name except a small student loan I paid every month. That night I got an email from Camille. Subject line checking in. Sloane, I hope you're okay. I know transitions can be hard. If you need help, you just have to ask. I read it twice. She'd never offered help before. Not once. I closed my laptop and opened it again. Created a folder. CV. I dragged the email into it. Then I pulled up my call log. The dates lined up too neatly. The cancellations. The timing. I didn't cry. Not this time. I just leaned back in my chair and let the quiet settle in. Something wasn't random, and for the first time since Darian, I felt something sharper than hurt. I felt focused. The second email came 2 weeks later. Shorter. Cleaner. Sloane, I've heard things aren't steady. If you need financial support, I can wire something. You don't have to struggle just to prove a point. I stared at the screen for a long time. My name in bold at the top. Her tone careful, almost generous. Wire something. Like I was already falling. I clicked back to the first email, then the second. I read them slowly this time. Not like a sister reading a sister's concern. Like a contractor reviewing a proposal. Transitions can be hard. Instability. You don't have to struggle. The words matched the ones my clients had used. Not exact. Close enough. I opened the folder again. CV. 2 emails inside. I added a note with dates and times. Then I pulled up my call history and typed those in too. It felt strange, documenting my own sister. My phone buzzed while I was still at the desk. A number I didn't recognize. Hello, is this Sloane Vale? Yes. A man cleared his throat. I'm calling about the retail redesign on Benefit Street. We were referred to you, but before we move forward, I need to clarify something. What would you like clarified? A pause. He lowered his voice. There were concerns raised about prior financial irregularities connected to your name. My hand tightened around the phone. There are no financial irregularities connected to my name. That's good to hear, he replied quickly. I just needed to confirm. The call ended politely. Professional, clean. I sat there another minute, phone still in my hand. Then I opened a blank document and typed a single line. Camille is not worried about me failing. She is making sure I do. I didn't call her. I didn't respond to the emails. Instead, I started packing. I didn't announce I was leaving Providence. I closed my checking account, forwarded my mail, packed the drafting table in pieces. That was enough ceremony. Charleston wasn't romantic. It was strategic. Lower operating costs, strong preservation market, older buildings that needed work. The waterfront property I walked into that first morning was raw. Exposed timber framing, mechanical systems hanging open, salt in the air. The inquiry had come through a development board referral. Not blind. I found that out later. A woman stood near the windows when I entered. Silver hair, navy blazer, no nonsense in her posture. You're Sloane Vale, Yes. Iris Montclair. That name I recognized. Commercial adaptive reuse. Quiet reputation. No flashy interviews. She didn't waste time. I've seen 2 of your Providence projects, she said. The Brownstone and the Corner Cafe. That caught me off guard. You drove up I Have Associates. Of course she did. We walked the site together. I didn't pitch. I measured sight lines. I traced the column load lines with my hand. After a while, she asked, "If financing tightens mid-project, where do you cut first cosmetics?" I answered, "Never structure. If you compromise structural integrity, you compromise resale and lease leverage." She watched me carefully at that. "And your debt exposure?" "I don't carry business debt," I told her. "Small student loan only. Current." She nodded once. "Come to my office tomorrow. Bring your financials. Not your portfolio, your financials." The second meeting lasted 2 hours. She had already pulled public records. My trust disclaimer was visible in probate filings. She didn't avoid it. "You walked away from $6.8 million, she said plainly. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was asked to." She held my gaze. "That's not the same as why you signed." I didn't answer right away. "I didn't want to litigate my own family," I said finally. She accepted that. Didn't approve, just accepted. Then she opened a folder. I own 5 properties outright. No outstanding liens. No encumbrances beyond standard commercial mortgages. I've been looking for an operator who understands preservation economics. She slid a draft operating agreement across the desk. "I will not invest in you personally," she said. "I will invest in a Delaware limited liability company formed for development purposes. Capital contribution $500,000. My interest 49% non-controlling. You hold 51% managing member interest." I kept reading. "Capital calls require unanimous consent. Distributions only after debt service coverage ratio is maintained at 1.25 or higher. If performance benchmarks are not met at 18 months, I have buyout rights." That wasn't charity. That's strict, I said. "It's disciplined. And if it fails, we dissolve. Assets liquidated. Proceeds distributed per capital account. Clean, cold, fair." She leaned back. "I am not rescuing you. I am testing you." I thought about Providence, about clients withdrawing politely, about Camille's careful language. "I don't need rescuing," I said quietly. "I need scale." A slight shift in her expression. "Good answer." We didn't sign that day. She asked for a written redevelopment plan, cash flow projections, sensitivity analysis under higher interest rates. I delivered them 48 hours later. 3 days after that, she called, "Form the entity. Send it to my counsel for review." When we finally signed the operating agreement, it wasn't dramatic. No speeches, just 2 signatures on clean paper. When I stepped outside her office, I didn't feel saved. I felt examined and approved. 5 years doesn't feel like a montage when you're living it. It feels like payroll on a Friday afternoon and checking debt service coverage ratios at midnight. The first 18 months were tighter than I expected. Construction costs climbed halfway through the waterfront project. Steel pricing jumped. Our contingency reserve started shrinking faster than projected. I remember sitting across from Iris with the updated budget in front of us. "We're over by $112,000. I told her. She didn't flinch. "Where do you cut, not structure? Not code compliance. We scale back finishes. Delay facade restoration to phase 2. She studied the revised cash flow. If the debt service coverage ratio drops below 1.25, distributions stop. I know. "And your management fee," I swallowed. "Deferred until stabilization." She nodded once. "Good. Then we proceed." We stabilized the building 8 months later. 90% leased. The numbers held, barely. The second property nearly didn't happen. Interest rates rose the same week we were finalizing financing. The lender revised terms, higher rate, shorter amortization period. I ran the sensitivity analysis 3 times. "We walk," Luis said quietly in my office. "It's too tight." I called Iris that night. "If we pass, We lose position in this corridor, I told her. If we move forward, we carry risk. Silence on the line. Do you believe in the asset, she asked. Yes. Then structure the risk. Increase equity contribution. Reduce leverage. We renegotiated. Smaller loan, larger capital injection, slower growth, safer footing. By year 3, Ardyn Collective was stable, not flashy. 3 properties under ownership through Ardyn Collective Holdings, clean title on each. No outstanding liens, conservative debt. We had 1 quarter in the red. I remember staring at the income statement, feeling that old pressure from Providence creeping back. Iris called before I could. This is not failure, she said. It's variance. Adjust. We adjusted. By year 5, we had 32 employees. Annual revenue just over $4,600,000. Portfolio valuation estimated at $18.7 million based on asset equity and stabilized lease income. I still lived above the bakery. The Shoreline Inn near Darien wasn't an impulse purchase. It was calculated. When we closed, the deed recorded cleanly with the county clerk under Ardyn Collective Holdings. That night, I drove past it alone. The porch sagged. The siding needed work. The numbers worked. Less than a mile from my parents' house. 5 years ago, I'd signed away $6.8 million. Now I held title to something built without permission. Not dramatic, just earned. The Greenwich Real Estate Leadership Forum wasn't my idea. Iris slid the invitation across her desk like it was a zoning notice. You're speaking. I wasn't asked. You are now. The program arrived a week later. Heavy cardstock. My name printed under Keynote Adaptive Reuse and Regional Growth. Sloane Ardyn, founder, Ardyn Collective. No veil. The ballroom felt overlit. White linen tables, polished silverware. The kind of room where asset managers talk about downside protection like it's a personality trait. I was adjusting the mic pack when I saw them. My father first. Graham Vale. Same posture. Same courtroom stillness. My mother beside him. Spine straight. Hands folded. Camille to his right. Scrolling like she wasn't invested. They hadn't noticed me yet. Iris stepped in beside me. You steady, yes. She followed my line of sight. Didn't comment. Just nodded once. The moderator ran through sponsors and performance metrics. Then, our keynote speaker this afternoon is the founder of one of the fastest-growing adaptive development firms in the Northeast. Please welcome Sloane Ardyn. There's a moment before applause when recognition travels across a room. My father looked down at the program again. Camille stopped scrolling. My mother inhaled sharply but quietly. I walked out. No rush. No performance. Thank you. I began. 5 years ago. I was told I wasn't aligned with legacy. A subtle shift in the room. Investors like that word. I used to think legacy meant inheritance. Centralized control. Asset protection through concentration. I paused. But inheritance is not the same as stewardship, and stewardship is not the same as construction. The room went still. I moved into the data. Before and after redevelopment metrics, lease stabilization timelines, debt structuring under variable rate pressure, our use of conservative loan-to-value ratios, operating agreements designed to prevent forced dilution, managing member control at 51%. We structure for durability. I said, not optics. When I displayed our current portfolio valuation, $18.7 million based on asset equity and stabilized recurring lease income, I didn't glance toward their table. I didn't need to. We did not begin with generational capital, I added calmly. We began with operating discipline. Silence. Not polite silence. Listening silence. During Q&A, a man near the front asked, "What triggered the formation of your firm?" I held the microphone for a beat. "Clarity," I said. "Nothing else." Afterward, people approached with business cards and cautious enthusiasm. One developer leaned in. "Your capital stack slide?" "That was deliberate." "It has to be," I replied. Across the room, my father stood but didn't move toward me. He wasn't shocked. He was recalculating. Camille spoke low at his side. He didn't respond. Iris touched my elbow lightly. "You're done performing," she said. I wasn't performing. Good. When the room thinned, my mother approached first. "Sloane, hello. We didn't know you were operating at this scale." Camille stepped forward, eyes on my badge. "Ardyn," she said evenly. "Strategic." "Yes." My father finally spoke. "You built controlling interest," he observed. I did. A small nod from him. Not approval. Recognition. No one mentioned the trust. No one mentioned the disclaimer. They didn't have to. 5 years ago, I'd been measured against an account balance. Today, they heard a number read aloud in a room full of investors, not inherited, structured. The call happened 3 days after the forum. I was in Charleston, back in the office, reviewing contractor bids for the Shoreline Inn. Luis was arguing with a supplier about reclaimed wood pricing in the next room. Normal noise. Normal day. My phone lit up with Evan's name. "Everything clear on the title?" I asked as soon as I answered. "Title is clean," he replied. Papers shuffled on his end. "Boundary survey confirmed. We notified adjacent property council this morning." And a pause. Not long, just deliberate. "I spoke with Arthur Leland." I leaned back in my chair. "That must have been pleasant." "He was professional," Evan said evenly. "Routine notice of acquisition. Standard disclosure of purchasing entity." I waited. He asked for confirmation of the holding company structure. I provided it. Then he requested valuation context. My fingers tightened around the edge of the desk. "You gave it." "Yes." Silence settled between us for a moment, and I repeated. He didn't react. Not verbally. Evan cleared his throat slightly. There was about a 15-second pause. Then he said he would inform his client. My client. That meant my father. "What exactly did you state?" I asked. "Current portfolio valuation estimated at $18.7 million, based on equity position and stabilized lease income. Conservative assessment, $18.7 million. Spoken cleanly. No drama." I exhaled slowly. "And Arthur," he said. "That's not possible." I didn't answer right away. "Did he say anything else?" "No." He thanked me for the transparency. I could picture my father hearing that number. Not emotional, not angry, just recalculating. "All right," I said finally. "Proceed with recording confirmation once the deed is finalized." "Already done." Evan replied. County clerk stamped and entered. "You are the record owner." We ended the call. Luis stepped into my office holding a sample board. "They're overcharging by at least $12,000, he muttered, then stopped when he saw my face. "Everything good. Everything's clear." He nodded and went back out. I sat there a minute longer. 5 years ago, my father had measured me against a trust account. Now a different number had reached him. Documented. Filed. Public record. Not inherited. Constructed. I turned back to the contractor bids and picked up my pen. The email surfaced during routine due diligence. Nothing explosive. Evan had requested archived correspondence connected to a brokerage firm we had engaged in Providence. Standard compliance review tied to a refinancing discussion. Clean process. He called late afternoon. "I need you to read something carefully." A file arrived minutes later. 3 emails in a thread. 4 years old. Camille's name at the top. Subject line, professional courtesy. I read slowly. "I would advise caution with any engagement involving Sloane Vale. There were internal trust irregularities that resulted in a formal disclaimer. I cannot elaborate due to confidentiality, but additional vetting would be prudent. Trust irregularities. Formal disclaimer. Every word technically true. Every word arranged to suggest instability." She hadn't lied. She had framed. I scrolled down. The broker replied within the hour, thanking her for the advance notice. The timestamp aligned precisely with the week 2 Providence contracts dissolved. I felt something settle, not spike. It hadn't been rumor. It had been architecture. Evan's voice came back on the line. This meets the elements for tortious interference with business expectancy, intentional communication to a third party, knowledge of your prospective contracts, economic harm tied to timing. I see it. We can file in Connecticut Superior Court. Discovery would compel internal communications from her firm. It would escalate quickly. I stared at the screen again. Camille's tone wasn't emotional. It wasn't vindictive. It was calibrated, the language of someone who understood how compliance officers think. She had inserted doubt without accusation. She never attacked directly, I said quietly. She adjusted perception. That's still actionable. Evan replied, if we file, it becomes public record. Yes, and it turns into a sibling dispute in headlines? A pause. That's likely. I leaned back in my chair. 4 years ago, I had assumed clients withdrew because I lacked scale, because I wasn't established, because I wasn't ready. No, the ground had been tilted. I don't want litigation. I said, all right, draft a cease and desist. Cite tortious interference. Attach the email thread. Demand written assurance of non-interference. Put her managing partner on notice. Understood. And make it precise. No excess language. It will be... The letter went out 48 hours later. 5 pages. Formal notice. Statement of documented economic harm. Demand for corrective action. No threats beyond what the law supported. 2 weeks passed. Through a mutual contact, I learned Camille had been reassigned internally, removed from client-facing advisory work, placed into compliance review oversight. No public complaint. No court docket. Just repositioned. I moved the email into a new folder. Evidence. Not anger. Not revenge. Just clarity. The first letter arrived without a return address, but I recognized my father's handwriting immediately. Deliberate. Controlled. The same handwriting that had signed the trust amendment 5 years earlier. I left it unopened on the counter overnight. When I finally unfolded the paper, there was no legal tone to it. No language about fiduciary duty or asset protection. Sloane, I watched your presentation. I misjudged you. I allowed fear to guide a financial decision that should have been about trust. Fear. He had never used that word before. I kept reading. When my father died, I was terrified of losing what he built. I saw instability everywhere. I thought discipline meant consolidation. I thought allocating the trust to Camille was the safest course. Safest course. That sounded like him. He continued, I did not consider that in protecting the assets. I was damaging the family. I folded the letter carefully and set it back on the table. He hadn't apologized in dramatic language. He'd explained himself. That felt more honest. A week later, another letter came. I have replayed that Sunday many times. I remember you asking nothing. That is what unsettles me now. 3 nights after that, my mother called. Sloane. Yes. Her voice didn't sound rehearsed this time. Your father hasn't been sleeping. I didn't respond. He keeps saying he reduced you to a balance sheet. She went on. He thought if the trust stayed concentrated, the estate would remain intact. He didn't want division. He divided it himself. I said quietly, I know. There was a long pause. We didn't know you were capable of building something of this scale, she admitted. That was never the real issue. I answered. You didn't trust my direction. She didn't argue. He was wrong, she said after a moment. But he wasn't trying to punish you. I leaned back in my chair. He was trying to control risk. I said, I understand that. I just wasn't the risk. The line stayed quiet. We're hosting dinner next month, she added. There will be people there who saw the forum. It would mean something if you came. Not yet. I understand. When the call ended, I sat with the silence longer than before. It wasn't anger I felt. It was distance. a space that had solidified over 5 years. Later that week, the zoning approval for the Shoreline Inn conversion was finalized. Ardyn House would open in the spring. When the donor registry was processed, one contribution stood out: substantial, structured through a personal account. Evan confirmed it. Graham Vale, no message attached. For the first time, I understood something clearly. He had tried to protect what he inherited. I had built what I owned. Those are not the same thing. My father came alone. No call ahead. Just his car in the gravel lot outside Ardyn House on a gray afternoon. The renovation was finished. The front sign had been mounted that morning. Founder Sloane Ardyn. He stood near the porch railing when I walked out, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders slightly rounded. I'd never seen him look uncertain in a doorway before. "It's well done," he said, nodding toward the building. "Thank you." We stood there a moment, whined off the water, distant traffic. "I don't know who you are anymore," he admitted quietly. The sentence didn't feel sharp. It felt tired. "You never really tried to," I replied. He didn't argue. I thought I was making a rational decision. He continued, allocating assets where they'd be protected. I wasn't an asset. His jaw tightened slightly. Then he nodded once. "I see that now." We walked inside. The main room was simple: long tables, drafting lamps, shelves waiting for portfolios. It smelled faintly of fresh paint and wood. "I donated because I believe in this," he said. "Not to by proximity." "I know." Another pause. "Is there a way back?" he asked. I considered that carefully. "There's a way forward," I answered, "but it won't look like before." He absorbed that, didn't push. When he left, he didn't hug me. I didn't expect him to. He stopped at the doorway and looked back once, like he was memorizing something. I locked up after he drove away and walked through the empty room alone. 5 years ago, I signed away $6.8 million at a dining table where my name barely existed. Today, my name is on a deed, a permit, a building. Not because I won, because I stopped asking to be chosen. Sloane Ardyn doesn't wait at other people's tables anymore. She builds her own. We've watched her do that quietly, step by step. And if you stay with Revenge Sins, you'll hear more stories that unfold the same way steady. Not loud,